Hi, everyone. This is a very short response to Professor Chukhrow article, The Postdramatic Theatre Misadventures in the Age of Contemporary Arts, for your Saturday, whether or not you need it. I find myself agreeing to a lot of arguments Professor Chukhrow makes in this article, especially when I can understand them. And I'm so proud of myself when that happens. The most remarkable, memorable about the article, anyway, is in this very dense, scholarly written essay, he uses the word stupid. I quote, "That is why the repertory theater, the post-dramatic theater, and the democratic theater are often stupid, anti-intellectual, unethical, and unmusical." Oof, refreshing, huh? To respond to everything that he writes would take me 2 years, only to cover what I understand, as mentioned previously. So let's not do that. I would just like to respond to two things that I feel super important and also erroneous. First of all, is what he takes to be the autopoiesis that Erika Fischer-Licht mentioned as central in her analysis of performance. He understood Fischer-Licht to take this as the living presence because she referred to performance. But no. In her book, The Transformative Power of Performance, and also in subsequent revision, Fischer-Licht mentioned centrally this notion as a feedback loop. And autopoietic, I'm going to quote, the original reference is to Maturana and Valera's arguments of cognitive biology, in which, anyway, they say this is a concept of systems as self-contained, whose only reference is to themselves. This self-reference is of utmost importance, and I believe this is why, and this is how, and this is what Fischer-Licht referred to in her argument. Performance is something that happens between the performer and the spectator, not as something merely, solely, exclusively exuded by the performer, the way Professor Chukhrow seemed to argue for. And he even says in his article, the allusion to performance in art is irrelevant. But of course it's irrelevant. It's so relevant. It's the fact that this question appears here just speak to my ngao da on Saturday morning and, make me do this on video too. And then the second thing that I feel super important in this article is Professor Chukhrow proposes 5 distinguished paradigms of performativity with special mention of the theater of theater. Just a recap, he proposes 5 paradigms. 1, the performance in contemporary art. 2, the dramatic repertory theater. 3, the post-dramatic theater practice. 4, the art practices that borrow performing practices. And finally, the 5th paradigm, the theater of theater. And here he goes on to unpack, to extend this notion. And it's very interesting to read. And one of the example is the, sorry, it's so long. I'm gonna just have to find the thing. Let's take this. He gives more, but let's take this. I quote, when Hamlet utters the phrase to be or not to be, he similarly expresses the most profound philosophical idea in a seemingly unphilosophical or non-theoretical manner. It is a philosophical phrase, but it is simultaneously playful, sarcastic, actorly, and poetic, and it is uttered seemingly on behalf of another performing subject. That is, the phrase to be or not to be is repetitive. An example, another example. Orpheus' journey to hate is therefore a metaphor, in a sense, for all truly theatrical action and theatrical processualism. The main event is that the hero has been forced to exit life, but also been forced to perform. Later, this same performance syndrome is acted out in the theater. That is, the tragedy of Orpheus has to do both with the loss of a loved one and also with the fact that he is destined never to stop, constantly and syndromatically resuming his lamentation and mourning, a performance whose repetition is, in fact, the theater. Nice. He writes, we thus obtain the formula for the performing of performing, the theater of theater. As in, it is not merely someone's grief that informs the theater and the actor's craft, but the grief of only such a person who is able to play while being in grief. I think Professor Chukhrow basically come back to the theater, the conventional theater, the very conventional theater, in a sense that it heightened, it aimed at least to heighten life. I don't think he answered the question he poses at the beginning of the article, which is, has the notorious sacrifice of dramatization, i.e., the theatrical episteme per se, in post-dramatic theatrical practices, proven politically effective and aesthetically radical? As I understand, his answer is no. But the theater has its best place in its own performativity, as in a construct that can be useful to talk about the construct itself. And it shouldn't imitate performance art, which he says already is theory itself. In here, I find a lot of things to think about, especially I also centralize my practice on the performing body. understanding that there's an audience. In this vein, continuing my little disagreement with his understanding of what Erika Fischer-Licht proposes as fundamental to performance, the feedback loop is what makes performance, especially in theater, of course. So everyone, that is my little response to, I believe, two of the points Professor Chukhrow made in this article. Very interesting article. Yeah, I should do my homework now, but it's lunchtime. So thank you for tuning in. More to come or not.